We may not think the Dodgers are as bad as you think, but there are some things to be worried about. Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening and watching every day, which can be made easier by subscribing or get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube. If this is your first time listening, watching, welcome. I'm Samperio. That's Jeff Snider, and we are Locked On Dodgers. We've been Locked On Dodgers since 2019. We've been covering the Dodgers in our own way for over 10 years, and we've been Dodger fans our entire lives. And Jeff, while we are known to be maybe some of the more positive Dodger thinkers, there are things that do have us maybe not staying up at night yet, but definitely in the back of our heads of, oh, this could happen, and then this might not work out like the way we want it to.
Yeah, I've been described as annoyingly optimistic, and I kind of wear that as a badge of honor. I do believe in optimism. I think it's I think it's a good way to be a baseball fan, but also I am a Dodger fan who wants the Dodgers to win the World Series this year. And so while I'm not freaking out in April, I am constantly kind of thinking. So I guess my concerns are more on the level of what do I think might be an issue later in the season, especially come October, or what might be enough of an issue that they need to address it soon so that it can get resolved in time for October. And that's kind of where I come at these things. And like for me, even before the season started, even before spring training started, my biggest concern all along was like, okay, if we have an outfield of Teoscar Hernandez, Andy Paez, and Michael Conforto, that has potential to be a very poor defensive outfield. And I don't know that it's been very poor, but it's definitely been shaky enough that it is constantly in the back of my mind, like, oh, that outfield defense.
Yeah, I think it's the concerns we're getting into right now are, if left untreated, this could be something that would, I don't know about the downfall of the Dodgers, but would cause the Dodgers some, issues for sure in repeating as World Series champions. And, it's easy to think back of last year's World Series because outfield defense was one of the things that got it started in terms of coming back and clinching that Game 5.
Although maybe that kind of makes me feel a little bit better because the outfield defense, like Aaron Judge dropping that fly ball, that was Aaron Judge's only error of the year. Aaron Judge wasn't a bad center fielder. He wasn't great, he was probably better than Andy Paez is. And definitely when he got to a ball, he was very sure-handed. He just happened to miss that one. But then you look at the other stuff like Juan Soto in right field, not getting to a couple balls. Even in Game 1 of the World Series when Shohei Ohtani scored the tying run, he was on third base because Soto first didn't get himself in position to try to catch the ball on the fly, misplayed the ball off the wall, and then made a bad throw that Gleyber Torres definitely should have knocked down. But it was kind of the trifecta of poor right field defense. And Teoscar Hernandez, like last year, was significantly better defensively in right field than he was in left field. I think it's too early to say this year if that's the case, but I've definitely seen a couple plays where it's like, oh, that looked like left field Teo out there in right field.
Yeah, with Teo and Conforto, it's a matter of, it looks like they're going to get there to some balls and then they don't. And, catch probabilities are pretty high up there, whether it's a bad read or, they don't want to maybe lay out right now in the April game and potentially hurt themselves, whatever it is. But there's been a couple that I think if you would have tried a little harder to catch that, you could have caught that. And, maybe if you would have had a better jump, you probably would have caught that. Center field, definitely it been an issue because of Andy Paez. But going forward, I would imagine that it won't be an issue for that much longer unless he starts hitting, unless he starts having 3 RBIs every game like he did in the last game, then maybe that's something that we're just gonna have to deal with in center field. But yeah, the outfield defense concerning. And then the fact that two of their best center fielder and their best right fielder both play middle infield right now, in terms of overall who's good. And then the other thing that we'll talk about a little bit was hitting. Kike and Taylor are better center fielders and outfielders than some of these guys were mentioning, but they're also not hitting at all. But Michael Conforto is also not hitting at all right now. So it's like, what are we getting? But yeah, with the defense, it's one of those where, yeah, it could cost them games. It might have already cost them games.
Yeah, but it also might not. And that's the thing. Like outfield defense, it's so hard because sometimes you have a game where there's 3 balls in one game, and sometimes you go 8 or 10 games without any play really being affected by outfield defense. Sometimes the balls just, are within the range of the outfielders. That's how it works, but and that's the scary part, is that you can't predict. The Dodgers could roll out this exact defense in the World Series and it could just not affect anything at all. They could be fine. They do lay out because they know everything's on the line. They do, for whatever reason, get a better jump or get lucky,
They get a bunch of high fly balls that they don't have to run very far for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like hitters can say, "Oh, I'm going to hit this thing I'm going to hit this where Pete Crow Armstrong would catch it, but Andy Pages won't." Hitters are just trying to hit the ball, and sometimes you hit it right at a fielder, so it's not guaranteed to bite them in the butt, but it's definitely enough potential. And like you mentioned, Tommy Edman is probably their best defensive center field. I think Edman is a good center fielder. I've said it before. I think our everydayers know. I am firmly on board with Tommy Edman being the second baseman because I think he is a legit Gold Glove second base. He's literally won a Gold Glove at second base. I think that is his best defensive position, so that's where I want him. But that's kind of with the caveat that, well, as long as they figure something out in center field.
Yeah, with the concern part, you look ahead is there a way to get better? And in the corners, it's literally going to be those guys just have to play better. Teo has to play better. Conforto has to play better. They signed Conforto to be a somewhat everyday player, and he's going to be out there, somewhat every day, unless things get really, really, really bad. Pages could go out to left field at some point if there's a platoon situation, or could go back down to the minors.
Pages looked pretty good in right field the couple days when Teo was sick. Yeah. Which got me I assume, and again, I know this isn't a safe assumption after seeing with Teo, like I would guess that Pages could also be a solid left fielder. And so, I wish that, I wish it was as easy as Torey Lovullo tried to make it in the All-Star game last year and just put Teoscar Hernandez in center field. He's a good athlete, but that lasted 1 inning and bit the National League in the butt there. That's not the answer. And that's this team is built for offense, and not with a total disregard for defense, but especially in the outfield, like it is built for offense, which maybe we wouldn't even be thinking about the outfield defense if 2/3 of the outfield weren't struggling to carry their weight offensively.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is, Teo wasn't great in left field last year, but we don't necessarily remember that because of the great offensive year he had. And the one thing we do remember is him throwing out Stanton at home in the World Series. So there was positive there.
Yeah. It's hard to remember very many negatives when your team wins the World Series. All you remember is it worked out.
Yeah. When it comes down to it, Mookie's going to stay at short probably for the whole season, and barring something happening.
And he's definitely not going back to right field.
Yeah. So there's different things to think about. Ha-Seong Kim's working out in center field. That might be, the one thing that kind of aids his defense is, okay, Ha-Seong Kim stays down there a month, however long they think he needs to be down there. He comes up, he's hitting, well enough to hold himself in center field, and he's a good center fielder. And then that takes a little bit of burden off the other guys. And the other guys just have to worry about okay, I need to run as fast as I can when the ball's to the left or right of me, depending which field I'm at. And if it's hit in the other way, Ha-Seong Kim is probably going to have a better chance to get there.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer. I don't know.
Yeah, obviously some of these answers will come if the offensive side comes, and that's what we're going to get into next because, the Dodgers are playing well overall. The offense isn't terrible, but there's also a lot of room for improvement. So we're going to get into that. Make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with the top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help finding the right talent, if you need help with a marketing campaign, let's say, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. And instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of the listens every day, whether it's your first listen, last listen, third listen, whatever listen. We appreciate if you are listening. And remember, you can be all the podcasts come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, Jeff, let's get right into the hitting side of things. And Michael Conforto is a name we've already talked about, not being very good defensively. And after that first week of the season, he hasn't been very good offensively either.
Yeah, his OPS, if you just look at his overall season, he still had a 117 OPS, which means overall he's been 17% better than league average. But that number was like 190-ish just a couple of weeks ago. And that's the concern. Like the last couple of weeks, he has been very, very bad offensively, and not like OPS doesn't even show you the times he grounded into double plays to kill rallies. You know, it's a rough thing. We touched on a little bit last night, but I mean, it's as simple as Michael Conforto needs to hit better, because and it doesn't seem to be a lefty-righty thing. He is hitting righties better than he's hitting lefties, but he's not hitting anybody well right now. And it's one of those things where if this was happening in July, he had a rough couple of weeks. So that was a rough slump. Happening right now, it feels like, especially with a guy who we don't have a history with on our team, it's very easy for Dodger fans to say, why are we paying this guy? What's he doing for us? And, you know, I think Michael Conforto is a better hitter than this. I think he's going to snap out. I wish I knew that for sure.
Yeah, with him, it's like I said, we don't have the history with him. We don't know exactly, what to expect. We can look at the numbers, and the numbers have, bared out that he's been league average to above league average his entire career. I mean, he 2021, 2023, OPS plus of 100, literally league average. Last year 117, where he's at right now. And I think with Conforto, he might have slipped under the radar if he hadn't grounded out in 3 double plays in the last 3 games. Especially when the Dodgers are already struggling a little bit once they have, to get runners on base, to keep runners on base, and go about it that way. But yeah, it's one of those where if he's gonna have a hot week and then a week and a half, 10 days hot, 10 days not, that'll be frustrating in those 10 days that he's not. It'll be fun in the 10 days that he is. But there's nothing to show right now that he won't be at least league average again. But if he's not going to give great defense, he would need a little bit more than that, or risk getting platooned once they do maybe figure out the center field situation. Maybe if Andy Pages does keep hitting, or maybe they decide to just go make a move.
Yeah, BC in the chat mentions that Conforto's on base percentage is still high, but again, that's just like the fact that his OPS plus and his OPS still look good overall. In the last 12 games, Conforto has a 132 batting average and a 283 on base percentage, which, yes, his on base percentage is still a lot higher than his batting average. 283 is a terrible on base percentage. 211 is a terrible slugging percentage. His OPS is 493 over those last 12 games. Like, just simply put, last 12 games, he has been terrible. And that kind of leads in. He's not the only one. In fact, Mark mentions Max Muncy in the chat. And if you look at it, the Dodgers starters, you have 3 guys who are concerns. You have Pages, Muncy, and Conforto. And Pages and Muncy both are maybe showing signs. I'm more inclined to believe the signs of Muncy breaking out because he looks a little bit more like himself. Right now, his OPS plus this year is 69. It's as nice as that is, it's terrible. And Andy Pages is 75. And both of those are after a couple good games. Those three guys, we mentioned Muncy. We talked a lot about Muncy last night about how if he can start hitting, that's huge for the Dodgers lineup. And I think this kind of underscores why, because 6 of your 9 starters are hitting well. We'll talk about the bench offense in a minute. That's been awful. But 6 of the 9 starters are hitting really well. And all 3 of those other guys, there's at least reasons to believe that they might hit well.
Yeah, with Muncy, Robert says he thinks he's turned a corner. Apparently, in the offseason, Muncy worked on hitting more ground balls and line drives, I guess, instead of maybe going for the home run. I don't know. Whatever it was, it seems to be going the other way now, hopefully, and that's the case. Muncy, have an on base of 350, hit 40 home runs. Like, that's all the Dodgers really need from you. They don't need you to be that guy that's the savior on offense, or to, Muncy gives good at-bats almost all the time. And the fact of the early part of the season when he wasn't giving good at-bats, that was concerning because, okay, maybe he's not seeing the ball as well. He's definitely not reading the ball out of the hand and stuff like that. When Muncy strikes out, he looks bad a lot of the times, but that's also because he's probably going up there with the plan and looking for one specific pitch or one specific area or something. And when he looks, bad from pitch 1 all the way to striking out, then that's where, issues lie, because maybe he doesn't have a plan. And that's something Robert touched on, earlier in the week, where it seems like guys were going up there trying to cover the entire plate rather than, just focus on one thing and try to make contact there. So Muncy, I'm not worried about him as much. Conforto, maybe not as much, but also because there's no one behind him, like you alluded to, that's where the issue lies.
Yeah, Muncy's on base percentage is up to 309 now. It was 207 on April 4th, after the game on April 4th. So what's that, 13 days ago? In those he's played 10 games those 13 days. He's got 385 on base percentage. Like, that's the max Muncy we know. 258 on batting average, 385 on base percentage. The slugging still isn't there. He still hasn't homered this year. That's the next thing that needs to come. I feel like the walks and even the strikeouts, he's only 13 strikeouts and 39 plate appearances that time. So that's still higher, but it's lower than what it was earlier in the season. And so I feel like he's getting closer to Muncy. The next step is, let's see a couple of home runs and maybe a few more doubles. But then, like we said, the big concern offensively is, and I guess this is going to tie into our next segment. We talk about how health is always a concern with the Dodgers. Any one of these guys could get hurt at any point in time. And right now, the backups who you have on this roster who aren't starters, you have Kike Hernandez, who has an OPS plus of 59. If you don't know OPS plus, that means he's 41% worse than league average. You have Miguel Rojas and his OPS plus of 3, meaning he's 97% worse than league average. You have Austin Barnes and his OPS plus of -50, which means that he is a magical anomaly that is somehow 150% worse than league average. You have Chris Taylor, whose OPS plus is 46. When Chris Taylor is your second best option off the bench offensively, that tells you what you need to know about the quality of the bench bats right now.
Yeah, and Chris Taylor, I mean, even though he's been better than maybe some people believe, it's also not a lot of hard contact. There's a lot of, barrels are overrated type hits that he's had this season. Kike, I don't know. I don't know if there's a new pair of glasses they can get. Like last year, that was seemingly the saving grace. Right now, who knows? Maybe he needs to be playing in different positions. Maybe that keeps him more aware. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to try to get into these guys' psyches, but obviously something's off right now. He's working through that. But again, it's one of those where this is kind of the trouble you get into going back to what you already had and what you know. Rojas, Taylor, Kike, you could have made cases for all of them to not return to the team. And, 2 of them were under contract. One of them wasn't. And now they're back with the team, and who knows? Yeah,
and I Kike is the best of the 4. And I used to give people a hard time when, like Giants fans, where they would talk about Madison Bumgarner and, his superhuman postseason skills. And I'm like, well, isn't that annoying that he doesn't try as hard in the regular season? If he's got these superhuman skills, why doesn't he just do that all the time? And that's kind of how I feel about Kike Hernandez. And Kike at least has addressed that and said, he just feels like it's easier for him to focus. I wonder if there's some way for him to, I would be fine with just clutch Kike, even if his overall numbers don't look good. But when he comes up with 2 guys on and 2 outs, he rips a double for us, and if he can find a way to tap into postseason Kike, even if he can't, for whatever reason, do that all the time, tap in once in a while. I do still believe that Chris Taylor is just a placeholder right now. I still think Taylor is on the roster because there wasn't necessarily anybody else to take that role. And if somebody were to get hurt, I don't think they would say, okay, Chris Taylor, you're a starter now. It would be, okay, now it's time to go to, whoever, Alex Freeland. Obviously it depends on who gets hurt, but Alex Freeland, Dalton Rushing, Hae-Sung Kim, those guys who are currently in AAA hitting well. I think those are would get shots in the case of an injury. And so I don't stress too much about this bench offense right now, except that we do still keep seeing these guys sometimes get at bats, and with Freddie Freeman's injuries and everything, I feel like I would love it. Obviously, in a perfect world, Dodgers have great hitters 1 through 13 on the roster. That's not really how any major league roster is built, though.
Yeah, there are always concerns when it comes to health and when it comes to the Dodgers, and we've seen a little bit of it already. We've talked a little bit about it, and we're going to talk a little more about it, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you always talk to a real person. And for those trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TN and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one an everydayer, it's just someone that listens or watches every day. We know there are a lot of you out there. We know that we've been getting some new listeners here. And if you want to become an everydayer, you just need to listen or watch every day. We're in the thick of baseball season, and we'll be in the thick of baseball season until the end of October. So why not join us now? Join us every day, and get your Locked On Dodgers fix daily. And we'll try to deliver that for you. And if you can go beyond the podcast, you can do that by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with the Dodgers, and join our Discord server where you can talk Dodgers with other Dodger fans. And Jeff, I would imagine at some point this season in the Discord server, we're going to talk about injury that affects the Dodgers in a stronger way than it has so far this season. Obviously, we haven't seen any good spot starts from Robleski, Knack, or Bobby Miller yet in the wake of Blake Snell getting hurt, but they were going to need a pitch, at least one of those guys anyways, just based on how everything was laying out. But, Blake Snell injured, we would imagine going to be back in not too long if everything goes right. Tony Gonsolin started the year injured. Clayton Kershaw is currently rehabbing but not available to come back. You had Evan Phillips and Michael Kopech start the year on the IL. Evan Phillips may be back this weekend. They haven't necessarily had a huge offensive injury. That's long-term. Freddie Freeman was out for a while. That's what put Kike Hernandez at first base for a lot of those games. But what the depth is for the Dodgers is not necessarily on the current major league roster. The depth is beyond that. And the depth of beyond that is not knowing what you're going to get from rookie guys. So that's why health is definitely a concern for us.
Yeah, it's always a concern, like you said. And right now, I think it is easy to overblow this concern a little bit at this point because we have seen Robleski and Knack and Miller all pitch kind of pretty poorly. the fact is, if it was October, we wouldn't have seen any of those guys pitch at all, because it's not like they are down to only 2 healthy starters. These are guys who are either filling the 5th starter role or the 6th starter role. That's what most of these starts have been, what those 3 guys, they made 4 starts, and 2 of those were as the 5th starter and 2 of those were as a 6th starter. You don't need a 5th or 6th starter in October. And so obviously right now, Roki Sasaki would have been the 4th starter in the postseason. And at the current stage of his learning curve, development, whatever you want to call it, I don't think any of us would be super comfortable with that. But when you do think about the fact that you have Blake Snell coming back, you have Shohei Ohtani at some point, you have Clayton Kershaw at some point, you have Emmett Sheehan at some point, those guys, maybe everydayers are getting tired of us saying, like, the depth is all about having at least 4 healthy, good starters in October. And so on the starting pitching side, yeah, it will cause us some heartburn during the regular season as guys get hurt. And as we do occasionally see some guy who continues to prove that he's not ready to pitch in the big leagues, that'll still happen some. I'm sure we will see, like next week, we'll probably see another spot starter. And it'll probably be Justin Robleski again, I guess. And we'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll go well. He pitched well in spring. Who knows? So, but none of us are hanging our hats on that. And if we were sitting here thinking, Justin Robleski is going to be our 3rd starter in October, we'd be really, really concerned. I'm not at that stage of concern with this starting pitching.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about starting pitching overall. They've said Ohtani's getting slow played. If the playoffs were in 2 months, Ohtani would probably be starting his rehab assignment right now, and just to build up arm strength and be ready to go. Clayton Kershaw would be ready to go, starting his rehab assignment. All these guys would be ready to go, but it's not. And they have gotten by with a lot of guys the last 2 years in starting roles. And another reason it looks so bad is because the offense just hasn't been there, to put up 8 runs and help these guys out. Well, they did do that for Bobby Miller, and it almost didn't work out.
Yeah, Bobby Miller proved 8 runs is what you need when you got a spot starter from Miners. I didn't even mention Tony Gonsolin, in that depth, like guys who are coming back. On the bullpen side of things, there's maybe a little bit more concern because, like you said, you do have the 2 guys who are hurt right now, and Phillips and Kopech. Phillips is getting ready to come back. Kopech is, I don't know if we have a
bullpen. So
yeah, don't even have a firm estimate on when we expect him back. I think with him, they're kind of having that same thought as Ohtani. Like, our goal with Kopech is to be ready to throw 102 miles an hour to the bullpen in October. And whatever we need to do to get him ready for that is what we want to do. We only had him for 2 months last year before October, and that worked out just fine. So I think there's probably some of that. But then when you look, like, the column on Baseball Reference that makes me nervous is up at the top, it says age. And you go down and you've got just in the bullpen, Tanner Scott's 30, not old, but approaching baseball player old. Alex Vesia, 29. Luis Garcia, 38. Also not good. I won't stress too much about him. Kirby Yates, 38. Anthony Bonda, 31. Blake Trinan, 37. I got to Miguel Rojas, who's 36. See, I'm not counting on much from him on the mound. But, there is some age there. And Evan Phillips is, approaching baseball middle age, at least. So, when you have relievers of that age, there are going to be some injuries sometimes, like Blake Trinan. Somebody asked us about, why didn't Blake Trinan pitch at all in the Rockies series? And I don't know the answer. I don't think he's hurt, but it might just be, let's do everything we can to give Blake this entire series off, because he is 37 years old. And
they did it last year down the stretch without us even knowing, until we realized, hey, Blake Trinan hasn't pitched in like a week.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the same thing they did the past few days. He did pitch the last game against the Cubs. I think it was the last game. And he didn't allow a run, but he did, he didn't look super great. And so I think they probably said, all right, let's give him this series off. We should be able to sweep the Rockies even without Blake Trinan. And that's kind of what, like, when people say, well, it's just the Rockies. I'm like, yeah, but also it was Bobby Miller and no Blake Trinan. Like, the Dodgers weren't necessarily trying their hardest either. They were treating it like an April series against the Rockies, and they still swept. Not the Rockers. Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, I think the Dodgers would have swept them even more decisively.
Yeah, and then
Are you old enough
I
to
know
remember
Shawn
those guys?
Michaels, but I don't remember him.
Marty
Part of that.
Jannetty was Shawn Michaels' tag team partner on the Rockers back in the '80s before you were alive.
Yeah, so not there, but yeah. And then when you talk about the offense, real quick, it comes down to if someone gets hurt, you're going to bring up someone unproven from the minor leagues in Dalton Rushing or in Alex Freeland or in Haesung Kim, and that's where the depth is unknown. You know, it's there. They have someone major league caliber or ready to fill spots, but not necessarily what you're going to get out of those spots. And that's where they're kind of at right now. I would imagine Andrew Friedman and co are exploring all options of position players, probably in the outfield right now, just to be ready in case something happens, and in case of fire, break the glass or whatever the wording is.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify. I see Mark in the chat said October. Is Kopech that badly hurt? I didn't mean Kopech won't be back until October. I was just saying I think their main thought about Kopech was we want him healthy in October, and so I think that's why they're slow playing him now, because they don't want him throwing a full 6 months before then anyway. And if they get 4 months, great. Even if it's 3 months before October, as long as he's healthy in October, that's their goal. No reason to think that it's anything major like that.
If October was in a month, Kopech would probably be starting in a rehab assignment.
Yeah, and he pitched through pain last October. Everybody pitches through pain in October, and that's why they're not going to do it in April.
Yeah. All in all, the Dodgers are still 14-6. They're still the NL West.
Second place now. Giants lost today.
There you go. Second place now in the NL West. The NL West, before the games on Thursday, had the top 4 records in Major League Baseball. The D-backs were tied with a few teams, so they haven't played each other yet, and that's where a lot of this fun is going to come. And we'll see if the rest of these teams are really that good or just good right now. It's April 17th. There is nothing on this team that worries me to the point of they're not going to win the World Series. There's concerns in the moment. There's concerns if something is left untreated, and there's always concerns if health doesn't go their way. But at the very least, we know that if health doesn't go their way, or if those concerns become bigger issues, then Andrew Friedman and co are probably going to address them.
Yeah, and I was saying, I think today on our Discord, on our Insider Discord, maybe this is that painfully optimistic version of me again. Dodgers are a game and a half out of first place. They're in second place. And I think you can make a really good case that they are the only team in the division that can honestly say they're underperforming. I think the Padres are overperforming. The Giants are definitely overperforming. I think the D-backs are at best, at the least, playing how they expected to, and maybe overperforming a little bit. The Dodgers are underperforming, and they're still right there in there. And so as things, and we did learn in 2021, sometimes a team can overperform for a whole season like the Giants did that year. And we learned in 2018, sometimes a team like the Dodgers can underperform for basically a whole season. They still went to the World Series that year. And that's, I think this team is better than the 2018 team, better than most of the teams that we've seen over this last decade or so. And so I do expect the underperformance to start getting closer to the expected performance. And if they are 14-6, have a 700 winning percentage, on pace for 113 wins or whatever, when they're underperforming, I'm excited to see what they can do when they just, meet expectations.
Yeah, big matchup. In terms of good pitching this weekend, if you're into that, Jacob deGrom versus Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Nathan Eovaldi against Roki Sasaki, and Tyler Mahle, who's been really good so far this year, against Tyler Glasnow. So we'll see what the Dodgers do. We'll talk about it on Monday. And that's going to do for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live. You can check out Locked On MLB Game Night after you check us out every night all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find an MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can be on the podcast on Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us and join our exclusive Discord server. You can check us out on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockdowndodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, text my advice play podcast, Lockdown Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you Sunday night.